Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being here for our almost end of this long book study. It's remarkable that nearly 60 people have been continuously coming every week for nearly 10 months. It just blows my mind. And thank you for keeping this energy alive as a group. And thank you, Jenny Sheehan. She's our co-host today. And we couldn't do this. The dynamics are here like this, and I feel that we keep coming back because having the different co-hosts keeps it fresh and it keeps it alive and a little variety each week. And for sure, you guys would get tired of me in a couple of weeks. You'd be going, I don't know. These men and women that have been co-hosting, they're just lovers of truth, just like all of us, and their insights are very helpful, very valuable. It has been my joy to be the founder of this book study, but it's also, it gives us a space where we can look at these different ideas and feel them and then allow the experience to reveal itself to us and for us. And hey, we have our trailer. I think our trailer is going to be ready on Friday. I'm hoping it is. And here's the poster for the trailer. So we have the poster here, so you can see our lineup. And the trailer has almost everyone in it. And I think the trailer is going to be ready on Friday. We're hoping that it is. And then you're going to see a 3-minute episode of The Mind Unveiled with all of these characters. It is a really great communication device. It's going to inspire, it's going to reveal to people their different ways of seeing their self through the communication of each of these sages and awakened beings, and it's just it'll be another vehicle. We have 1.7 million views on episode 1 since June, and they're chomping at the bits to see what's next. I've seen the preview of a 1 hour movie before it's in the editor's hands right now, being enhanced and tweaked and all the magic that they do with it. And we're expecting that we'll publish that in the spring of 24. It takes a long time. It's a lot of hours in cinematography editing, as you can imagine. And I'm just really happy to see that we have another one. And many of you, or some of you, maybe all of you, know that we're going to India soon, and we're going to be doing an episode on India and the Awaken the World initiative in Canada. We're going to be combining those two things, but we may just get India on one episode. It's so diverse and it's so different with the Ramana teaching in Tiruvannamalai and the teachings for the Shivananda ashram that's up in Rishikesh, which is the lineage of sages that recognize Jesus as a guru, as Isa, who learned the yogic traditions in India before he went back to Jerusalem and did his magic and his crucifixion experience, resurrection experience in Israel. So anyway, thank you for being here for our the coming to the close of this book study, and we'll go ahead and get started on what are we on 431, Jenny?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
431, what was Sri Krishna's role?
Yes, that's a great question. I started in, and I'll read in the glossary in the back of volume 3. This is what um, Nitya Tripta, the editor, says of what the Bhagavad Gita is. It's one leg of the tripod of Indian philosophy. It expounds karma yoga in particular. It is supposed to be the instructions of Lord Krishna to his friend and disciple Arjuna on the battlefield. So I just thought, well, let's put into perspective. This is part of the Hindu philosophy, religious system, and it's not part of the direct path per se of itself.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it is nice to sort of play in the sandbox of the Hindu philosophy. And in my mind, it's funny. I was having a conversation with a friend that was here for a few days, a spiritual teacher, and she came from Science of Mind and in Course in Miracles and still in Course in Miracles. And we were talking about Christianity and how morphed it is. And really, if you're going to look at or and adulterized and misinterpreted, and the Hindu religion is also misinterpreted by the West because there's some great teachings in the Hindu religion that is based on the characters of all these different gods, but they're not idol gods. They're characters of of uh, of transformation. They're characters of like the Ganesha and Shiva and all of these other different symbols of things that have spiritual, metaphysical significance. So it's a totally different kind of religious tradition.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting, and I'm very happy that we're seeing the descriptions of it through the lens of the direct path, through the lens of a teacher that we regard as pointing the way to truth as Atmananda does.
Yes. And the response here is that Lord Krishna is the Bhagavad Gita itself, and the Bhagavad Gita is the absolute truth. His life is a living commentary on the Gita. And here we go. In the whole of his life, we do not see a single instant of his having ever done anything for his personal self. From stealing the butter and curds in his infancy to his expounding the ultimate truth to the gopis in the Samanta Panchata, he had been unique in selflessness. Just as you were saying, Bill, he's one who never wept in his life. And this shows that its opposite, namely pleasure, was also absent in him. He was beyond both, always at the background. And there's the non-duality, the pointing the the Bhagavad Gita pointing back towards the non-duality.
Hmm. Yeah. And then the last sentence, uh, at the last moment, he blesses or she blesses even the hunter who shot the fatal arrow in him or her. And that's, we can all connect with that because I feel as we deepen our understanding in these teachings, we become transformed. We become transfigured. We no longer hold, a long period time grievances, and we just we change. We get changed alchemically within from these teachings. And we can say, just like Jesus said, forgive them for they know not what they do. I think that is happening to everyone here. Everyone here is being transformed. And that's the born again. Of course, Christians we are being born again, but not in the Christian way. You know what I mean?
Oh,
We,
no, I don't. It's
well,
not for discussion now, but I do not know what that
the
Christian
Christian way is
expression
that
means.
when you accept Jesus as your Savior, you become born again. Old things are passed away. You become a new creature in Christ, right? In Jesus Christ. But the truth is, we become a new creature in consciousness, Christ consciousness. We're all being born again in the renewing of our mind and the embodying of the ideas of our direct experience of awakening.
No, I don't think that. I think we're already awake, and it's just the realization of it. I don't think there is a. I understand what you're saying, Bill, but it doesn't quite make sense.
Oh, it does. Okay. All right. I can
But
accept that. Cool.
but thank you though. But let's move on to 432, and of course here another way of how is consciousness related to objects. This is, I think every week this has come up for us, so it's just another way of him putting into words that which is only it's beyond words and understanding. And the first line says it all: consciousness has no separate object. So it comes to the realms of the mind and senses and claims the object there as objects of consciousness. But when you look deeper to see how they become objects of consciousness, you have to leave the realm of senses and mind. Beyond the mind, the objects become consciousness itself, and there all objectivity vanishes.
Yeah. And he's also describing the transformation experience that occurs in a gradual movement uh, as awakening deepens. So yeah, you're right. We're already awake, but there's an old pattern that's in place for most of these uh, human experiences that takes a while to to self-realize fully. And that's why it can take many years to have a full realized experience.
Oh, that's lovely, Bill. Yes.
Yeah. Every sense organ has a corresponding sense object, and the object of any one sense organ cannot be cognized by any other organ. Moreover, every sense object is of the same nature as the corresponding sense organ itself. Therefore, if consciousness were likewise an organ and had an object of its own, it could only be of the nature of consciousness, quite distinct and separate from any other class of sense objects. The usual statement, I am conscious of a thing, is not correct, since a thing can never be the object of consciousness. What you mean by the statement is only that you are perceiving the thing through the mind in a subtle manner, or that you are mentally conscious of it, or in other words, that you can reproduce it in your mind. So he's really taking the audience and us in to the deeper understanding of and the subtle references that we use in our deepened awakening or awakeness experience.
Yes, he's clearly pointing to lack of separation
Yeah.
in this discourse.
Yeah.
And the last little bit, when you search for that thing in consciousness, it is nowhere to be found. It has merged in consciousness. And this statement ultimately means I am conscious of myself, or that consciousness knows consciousness. Therefore, consciousness cannot have any other object other than consciousness. And
Yeah.
and the phrase at the end, it's by the self that self is seen. That's what you need to clarify. It made me think of what it came up a few weeks ago, the I am eyeing, that idea. It's all happening.
Yeah.
It's all happening.
Yeah. And also there was a question that came up in the last couple of weeks. I don't remember who said it. It might have been in a session that was watching, but just being aware of being aware. It's not awareness. It's not a seeing mechanism. It's just a being mechanism. And that's what that last statement is. It says it's by the self that self is seen. So it's a seeing, not a labeling. It's a simply just the witness.
And not a seeing with the eyes.
Yes. Yeah. It's a seeing as a being.
Is Dr. Seuss here?
Right, right. Anyway, yeah, it's good. It's good to saturate in these ideas and contemplate also.
um Jude has her hand up. um
Jude does?
Is it
yeah,
appropriate for me
Oh,
to ask?
Jude. Oh,
yeah,
I didn't see your hand up. Sure, come on.
yes, come on.
Oh, I just love this because it's something that I've spent a lot of time contemplating, that consciousness has no separate object. So it comes to the realms of the mind and senses and claims the object there as objects. So it's the mind through labeling, distinctions, and differences, through the senses. Now, this took a lot of stepping back for me. Through the Course in Miracles, it speaks of the end of perception and understanding the body as an instrument of perception through the senses. So, what happens to Judy when she has no instrument of perception? Was my question. That no mind, no mind reflecting on her senses, reflecting the world to her mind. So it's like no minding what's all around me. Like when you're in stillness with your eyes closed, you're not seeing, it's quiet. What remains? So that's pure consciousness, awareness of being aware in stillness. But to practice that while you're in the body and you're in the senses as an instrument of perception, and how to do that knowingly became the quest. So it's, recognize it's by the self that the self is seen, became the understanding that the self sees itself. Now, what's the self? The awareness is what sees everything as being aware of itself. The awareness in the trees, the awareness and the squirrels and the birds and the skies and everything that has a sense of awareness about it, that's reflecting. And like love can only see itself, or kindness can only see itself, or beauty can only see itself, that it's at that level of truth, that truth can only see the truth and nothing but the truth. So this really is an important section to me, because it took some stepping back from the body, the perceptions, the learning of the world, and resting in merely being, like you said, Bill, merely being aware of without that personal interpretation or intrusion of the personal mind as an interpretation of what reality was, and being able to just see the light in everything. So this is really fabulous stuff. Did I make any sense at all? Thank
Yeah,
you.
I loved it. It it it's it's that quiet presence first and always in the background, and then it's the mind that is I call it the awake or awakeness mind that is now influenced from that still place, that the the labeling comes later from a mind that is awake and influenced from a quiet place that has no label, that's formless and just is. And so it's interesting that that's the that might be the transfiguration. That might be that is a transformation, but it might be the transfiguration. I don't know. You know, Jesus was just a man that a yogi that came from India back to where he was born as a yogi, as a sadhu, as a guru, and he still had all the faculty as a realized being. He still used all the faculties of his human self to help people to wake up. And we're not different from him.
No,
I
like
loved what you gleaned from that. That
that,
was that was awesome.
what Jenny said, we're all that, and we all know that. But what we veiled it with is all that we think we know, that we've learned from the world. You know, all the thoughts and thinking and concepts. That thinking, Krishnamurti, I love Krishnamurti because he talks about that thinking, you know, that you know, we think about, to think about stuff is really quite unnecessary. It's really, we don't need to think about stuff. You know, to think is essential to functioning, but to think about it, it's like that's all interpretation. The
Yeah.
different interpretation or having an opinion about it is how I simply refer to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jude.
Yeah, that was awesome. All right. We should move on.
Yes, 433. What is practical rest? The ideal rest, capable of relieving the exhaustion of days and nights of intense strain, is obtained by putting the mind in what is called the blank state, Majjagadavastha, for an hour or even less, as convenient. In order to induce that state, you have to refrain from all thoughts, objective as well as subjective. But in the early stages, the mind rebels against it and takes to other thoughts indiscriminately. Then you have deliberately to dismiss those thoughts one by one. After a sufficient period of such training, you will find that the mind comes to a blank state of absolute rest. Look at this next line. But this exercise should never be attempted except under the personal instructions from a competent guru.
Right.
And then he gives some reference to this, to that statement from Sri Shankara. The quotation explains how you really understand anything said by the guru about the ultimate truth. You understand only when you are beyond the words, language, ideas, central idea, speaker or listener. At the time of understanding, the teacher as teacher and the disciple as disciple are both absent, both having risen to the ultimate background in apparent silence. Experience occurs only when the expression stops.
There it is.
Yeah, the pointing to, happening in the quiet afterwards. And what came to mind for this one was those words, blank state. And this is the what he's referring to about in this exercise. It should never be attempted, this attempt at the blank state. And I don't know if Jenny Beal is here. I think it was just last week. She explicitly stated that consciousness is not a blank state. We can get off track by thinking, the mind is an aspect of consciousness. Perceptions, sensations are all aspects of consciousness. And to be careful of emptying the mind completely is not necessary for this understanding.
Right, right. She said in the chat that blank state is what we try to avoid on the direct path. It is still duality.
Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You nailed it. And this is he's giving inferences for areas that there were teachings that were teaching that as a practice, and it was just off. It was offering something that was a distraction and actually just another form of duality.
Right, and to even this is seems to be describing some form of meditative practice that he's directly pointing to.
Yeah. Well, when he is talking about, in order to induce that state, you have to refrain from all thoughts, objective as well as subjective. As soon as that, is that attempting to accomplish something or to do something, or is that just a type of a practice that you let go of the practice? It's a sort of a untethering, the way he's describing it, not to try to achieve something, but to untether yourself from that practice.
Yes, I think you well stated the difference.
Yeah. Okay. Experience occurs only when the expression stops. Just the formless. There's just, in fact, Rupert says it so well. He says the highest form of teaching is with no words, when words are not used. That's the highest form of what
Conveyance.
Yeah, right. Jenny said it requires effort, but a blank state is something you can witness, unlike nirvikalpa samadhi. So that maybe why it was occasionally used as a practice. Right.
Right. Nirvikalpa, having the experience of it, the oneness with it, there's no separation in that bliss.
And no efforting.
And no efforting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Well, let's move to 434. Who is the real child?
Well, the worldly child, who is a child in ignorance, and the sage, who is a child in knowledge, are both unattached to objects. The child has not acquired the capacity to think, and the sage has gone beyond the capacity to think. But the child leaves a slight samskara behind after every activity, while the sage leaves nothing behind. Therefore, the sage alone is the real child. And so the word, the slight samskara, is pointing to something, the difference between the two, besides the ability to cognize something like Jude had just pointed to for us, you know, the thinking about something. And in simple terms, you know, samskara is like a psychic impression left behind, you know, that which becomes the conditioning and habits. It's an aspect of mind activity. And a child is unaware that this is happening, but I think upon some understanding, and of course from the perspective of the sage, there's full awareness about the mental or emotional activity involved in any activity, that superimposition after the superimposing of the doer upon the activity. Maybe that's a better way to just how Atmananda describes that, what the samskara is.
Yeah. And even the child in its innocence and basic purity still is carrying that psychic karmic kind of a residue, where the sage is not. Sage is living. The sage lives or is in a knowing or a known experience, a known non-attached you could say, I guess, as a example.
Yes, in the absolute understanding, there is no doer. A sage is free of the ability of, you know, a post activity leaving a trace.
Yeah. Well, he over and over and over again refers to the sage as a model, as a kind of an example of when something is overcome, or when something is not attached any longer. It's living as that that clear understanding.
Mm.
Yeah.
Isn't it exactly like 431? Lord Krishna never having or been totally unique of the selflessness.
Totally.
He never had a sense of personal self ever. It's
there it is. Yeah, you're right, Jude.
Beautiful, Jude. Yeah. That story of Lord Krishna is an example of this. Yeah.
There it is. Yeah. Who is the real child? Lord Krishna's that right over there. Good pointer.
And Jenny added in the chat that there is only one sage. The sage arises when the truth is expressed. Thank you for clarifying that. Right, the universal consciousness. All right, what about 435? What
Yeah.
are the different expressions of harmony? And he points to sound a lot. It comes up frequently in his discourses.
Yeah, the inner harmony of the absolute is first expressed in the language of the soul or reality without in the least losing its essence. The inner harmony of the absolute is first expressed in the language of the soul or reality.
Well, just as we were just talking about in 433, where experience only occurs when the expression stops. And as you said, what Rupert has pointed to, we're starting from the absolute and going to relative. But that other statement of what Rupert said is starting in the relative and working its way, receding its way back to source. So we're starting here in source, and then kind of he's breaking it down. So
Yeah.
Jenny's universal sage, the one sage, the language of the soul or reality, which is without words. So we're kind of pointing to, and I sort of pointing, it's a concept which points back to truth.
Yeah. Next, it is expressed in the languageless language of ideas. Next, in the language of ideas. Lower down, it expresses itself, or it is expressed in the language of sounds. Every such integral expression being called a mantra. And then still further down, it is expressed in the language of words, being the grossest form of expression. Boom. There it is. Yeah.
In all these different kinds of expression, the ideal to be maintained is that no part of that inner harmony of the language of the soul should be lost. This is possible only for a sage, well established in the sahaja state, never slipping out of that inner harmony or real background. Every thought and word of his is a mantra in its full sense, since the whole of his indivisible self is that inner harmony all the time.
Mm.
Yeah. And I guess speaking of the line that it's only possible for a sage, Jenny points that it's not a person. Any body mind can fall into ignorance. Yes. Thank you for that delineation. Because it's a human tendency to kind of want to put a formal hat on someone and, label them guru or sage or, but it's what is coming through that body mind is actually truth.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I think that's why I refer to it as an example of the sage. It's an example. It's simply that. It's an example of the character of presence. Where does laughter come in? Laughter is the joy expressing itself in form. It's absolute presence given form. It's a vibration, it's content, it's context, it's all of those things expressed. And what's funny, it somehow it taps into the divine, and it heals. It heals the body mind somehow in that sound, transmission, that tapping into our essential nature. Somehow it brings forth a healing salve. Yes, music to my soul. I know.
Yes, and Bill, I just noticed, and I apologize, Andrew has a question which probably was back about the blank state discourse we discussed. Andrew asks, is I am the way to connect with consciousness? How would you answer that?
Well, I am is a portal that is used by consciousness remembering itself and knowing itself at the same time. And Jenny Beal and I remembered a woman, Annika from the Netherlands, that she was in our book studies a few years ago, and she made this. She was an artist, and she made this, and she said she got it from someone else. But I am is the doorway into time and space, and I am is the exit out of time and space. Both, it acts almost as a portal into time and space and out of time and space, because even that mantra I am, it carries you to your true nature in remembering and knowing, and it does reveal itself in this very peaceful experience.
That's beautiful, Bill. Yeah, Andrew, what comes to mind is that we don't need to connect to consciousness. And consciousness is that which we are. So it perhaps is a portal, though, of realizing the oneness.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And
Or
that's
awareness of it.
yeah, it's not it seems like a connecting practice. It really it seems like that, and yet it's initiated from something that always is. It's initiated. There's an initiation of remembering that that seems like it's a practice, but it's a step, I think. It's a step in remembering, maybe. Jenny Beal said, we always are consciousness. There's nothing to connect to, just what you said, or anyone to connect. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Andrew, they're just getting down into the fine lines of the teaching in both of those statements, because in my mind, I love the mantras. When I walk to Giri Valam around Arunachala, oh my God, I all I could do was and it was just doing itself into this presence, what I enter now. It was almost a devotional. I think I am, it is almost brings us into an abiding and devotional remembering. At least that's what my experience is.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
What about 436?
436. How, oh, this is really good. Yeah. it's a little bit of a puzzle. How are the real flower and the real I one and the same?
Right. The flower, and it points to the earlier discourse, 432, where the object in consciousness. So now we have a label for it, and he's using a flower, just like a regular old flower that we might find anywhere. The flower is that permanent something upon which all its adjuncts or qualities appear and disappear. So also, I am that permanent something upon which the expressions like body, senses, and the mind come and go. Everything pertaining to the flower corresponds to the things pertaining to the I, like time or space or color or shape. You know, these, the mind superimposes the difference between a rose or a daisy, you know. But giving up all adjuncts from the subject as well as from the object, we find that what remains over is neither known nor unknown, but real, and therefore is nothing but the ultimate reality. Therefore, the real flower and the real I are in essence one and the same.
The flower is symbolic, though, right? The flower is symbolic, and you could say that it's symbolic of a something that has a fragrance.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah. Something left over.
Yeah.
In the absence of it. Yeah. And that line, what remains over is real, and therefore is nothing but the ultimate reality. Again, as we that neti reductive kind of method of understanding source, if that is right to say, you know, as we take away these qualities, what's left, and the realization that something exists, it's just not as we perceive it.
Right.
Perception is always superimposed upon the ultimate reality beyond it, behind it, and of it, you know?
Yeah. In the book, I Am by Rupert, he is talking about consciousness. I don't remember a book.
Oh, Andrew, if you want to come on, are you talking about his little book of meditations? That little, are you comfortable to come on, Andrew?
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. So I bought the book I Am by Rupert. And to me, what is describing is just consciousness. And
Yeah. Yeah, that's his book of prayers, right?
yeah, it's a book where he describes, it's as if he's talking about God, but at the
Yeah.
same time, he's talking about us as consciousness.
Yeah. It's the same.
And it's the same. So that's the way I took it. That we are consciousness, God is consciousness.
Yeah.
And for me, the I am is easier for me to get the understanding of consciousness, or other ways for me makes it difficult. I can't use an object, you know, the I am. I don't know if there are other ways to describe what is consciousness.
For in my mind, you know, there's so many different symbols and and access points in remembering and realizing. And I am always works what works for me, and it works for many people. And it's almost like a portal experience where a remembering the two words I am uh, brought into this acknowledgement somehow creates a portal of remembering and knowing.
Yeah.
And that's always worked well for me, and it's worked well for many people that I've come across over the years. And
Yeah.
I think if it resonates with you and it's giving you that connected remembering, then
Yeah.
I think
It
it's
resonates
awesome.
with me. But
Yeah.
Jenny is saying that I am is that which is reading these words. And
Yes.
Right now.
Right.
so it's between that and I am. I don't know. Maybe they are the same.
Yeah. What do you mean? What does she mean by should be right, not tight? I don't know, understand.
Oh, just a typo. She's correcting
Oh, I see.
that which is reading these words tight now. And she's like, no, I mean right
Oh,
now.
yeah. Right. Yeah.
I
Good.
think.
And Andrew, just the beauty of any contemplation, as Atmananda said in 433, that experience occurs only when the expression stops. So it's allowing that after the reading, going into that space where, you know, the magic happens.
Yeah, perfect. It's the
So
gap.
not focus on the words, it's letting the words point to that which is beyond.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Jenny, that was so perfect. That was a perfect statement of how it works. When the expression stops is the gap of being. Yeah. All right. Well, what is silent knowledge?
Right. So he's at the beginning here. Ordinary knowledge is knowledge of this or of any object, gross or subtle, obtained through a corresponding instrument. So he's talking about mental knowledge, as Jude brought up the word labeling, you know, the ability of mind to concretize the world, but also what information the eyes bring in, the hands and the sensations of the body obtained through a corresponding instrument. So that, as Atmananda just said, you know, the organs, the different body parts that bring information. So this is, he's classifying as ordinary knowledge. But the silent knowledge or witness has neither a medium nor is it obtained. Therefore, the witness is described as silent knowledge viewed from the standpoint of the mind or the ego. The ignorant mind has certain false standards set by itself and evaluates everything according to those standards. But when the truth is heard from the guru, the mind gives up all its previous standards. Thenceforward, the witness, which was so long qualified as silent, ceases to be silent, in the sense that it is the background of both activity and inactivity. Bill, I think you were pointing to that not only with the flower, but in your description of kind of a non-dual way to perceive born again. You know, there's this perfume that comes forth after the silent knowing, the deep registering.
Yeah. It's the deepened understanding unfolds into a realization that there's only one thing. That there's and you know, we call it by many names and misappropriate it by calling it many names, but at the end of understanding, or at the culmination of understanding, rather, it's realized that there's only one thing, and it has no characters or qualities, and yet it has all of them.
Yes.
All right. Could you refer this back to 432 and the senses of perception?
Sure. I will give that a try. So in 432, in the second paragraph, he's talking about every sense organ has a corresponding sense object. And we're simply saying that a nose smells, eyes see, skin touches, and that is what, in that first paragraph in 437, he's talking about ordinary knowledge. Any object gross, so that would be what we touch with the hands, or the appearance of the world in front of us, or subtle, which of course is referring to thought, or maybe inner sensation of the body sensation, subtle, that these are obtained through corresponding instruments, being the body or the mind. And as we can, and then to go back to 432, to finish that first sentence of paragraph 2, the object of any one sense organ cannot be cognized by any other organ. So we just see, it's almost like each aspect of this human experience has its own lane that it stays in, and that which our true nature, ultimate reality, is that which is underneath and yet also prior to that, and is the whole of the body and mind experience. Body mind experience.
Yeah, I think that was well surmised and kind of connected. That was really nicely done, Jenny. Thank you.
But Jude has still a little more questions. Says, ignorant mind and false standards of its reality. Limited? Oh, yes. So, and remember, consciousness is awake, but body minds do seem to awaken to truth. So in that ignorant mind, meaning perhaps a mind that has not been illuminated by the understanding that it's just along for the ride here. It's just a tool of consciousness. It's not in charge, you know. And so there you go, that's where the whole separate sense of identity is. That whole belief, the false standard is just another way of saying false belief in separation. And he said that, you know, therefore the witness is described as silent knowledge viewed from the standpoint of the mind or the ego. So, and that's the only place ego exists, is in the mental realm. So yes, very limiting.
Yeah. Really good. Yeah. Great
Speaking of
question.
ego and separate self, shall we, Bill, 438, what
Yep.
is individuality?
Individuality is not what the ordinary man or woman takes it to be. He or she takes it to be adherence to one's own body, senses, and mind. And at the same time, he or she believes that the individuality is changeless. Such an individuality is never possible.
Right, let's just stop right there, because body, senses, and mind are constantly changing. So even in the ordinary sense, it's not changeless. You know, if you know, to hear someone say, this is my personality, i.e., I am a Sigma male.
This is who I am.
Right.
It's just who I am. I have to express it because that's just who I am.
Right. But the Advaitin seeks that individuality of principle in him, which continues unchanged, even when the body and the mind change every moment. That individuality, if it should be changeless, can only be the real I principle, Atman.
Yeah. That's the distinction. That's the beginning of distinction for the neti that is the beginning of understanding. It's just a distinction of first it's a location. I'm not that, and then it's that gives you your primary understanding, and then you realize that, oh yes, and yes, I'm not that, but yes, I'm everything.
Yes. And it's helpful perhaps to think of it as it's kind of a technical definition of what's real, is in that understanding,
Right.
or in that concept of changelessness. You know, just holding that. Is it real? Well, if it changes, it's not. Period. You know,
Right.
like
If
personalities
if
change.
it's in time, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Jenny chimed in. Individuality is the changing conditioning of the body and mind. Some parts come from ignorance, some don't. There is no individuality for the real self. Well stated.
But what about the soul?
Oh
Jenny,
gosh.
what about
Bill, stop. We're
Okay,
running out of time.
I'm only kidding. Okay.
Oh, great. Oh, Jude chimed in again. John Klein speaks of the question coming from the true self. What do you take yourself for? Who am I? Yes, yes. What is asking that question? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. This is a number 439, how to assuage human suffering. And of course, assuage just means to lessen or decrease. And I can catch myself stuck in this place sometimes. So I appreciated the discourse. The problem is an illusion. Nobody actually wants to assuage human suffering as it is. Knowledge of human suffering creates a sympathetic suffering in you. It is this suffering in you that directly calls for a solution and drives you to the habit channel of always seeking causes and remedies in external objects. Thus, you attribute the cause of your suffering to the human suffering outside. But in manners of all wise folks, a solution could be suggested to this in two ways, objective and subjective. Why don't you read a little, Bill?
The objective solution seeks to correct the world and its arrangements so as not to allow recurrence of the human suffering. This is not always possible or practicable because the external objects in question are diverse and often not under control, not under our control. It is like attempting to cover the surface of the whole world with leather in order to offer smooth walking. This is often the way of the ignorant world. The alternative adopted by the wise one is to seek the subjective remedy. Your knowledge of something else was certainly the cause of your pain, but that other something was never in the knowledge or in you. So examine your knowledge of anything more closely, and you find that it was nothing but pure knowledge. Even when you turn your attention inward, the suffering vanishes. So return to your real nature, and you are free. Correct yourself alone, and do not attempt to correct the kingdom of God, if ever there is one. Yeah.
Right, and just to point out in the subjective remedy paragraph, when examine your knowledge of anything more closely and you find that it was nothing but pure knowledge, remember that's another expression he uses for consciousness, pure knowledge. So you find that it was nothing but consciousness itself.
Yeah. And that everything is consciousness itself.
Right.
Yeah.
And do not attempt to correct the kingdom of God if there ever is one. And of course, that doesn't mean we don't do nothing when an opportunity presents itself. You know, there's action to be taken and go with it. But just as we see the objective solution, we can see that happening in live action now. Usually attempts to fix things just cause many more problems, and so it's like
and worry and fear and remedies that don't work.
Yeah.
And Lynn says, don't save the world, save yourself. Actually, yes. Put the oxygen mask on you so that you see clearly, and then you might not do anything. And then again, you might do something, but it will come from intuitive movement. It won't be mental. It will just be something that's happening.
Right. It's helpful for me to think of it as how helpful am I if I'm not operating out of a sense of peace and freedom? It's like pretty
Yeah,
worthless.
you can be a frantic mess giving instructions from total chaos
Right.
and or panic or fear.
But Susan's right. Our actions are part of consciousness. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Is
that's also true. Yeah,
right. Either consciousness forgetting itself or in the remembering of itself. Remember that vidya, avidya flow
yeah,
thing that's happening. So there's always a space for forgiveness.
yeah.
All right, well, let's
Last one. We have a few minutes left. Is the universal a spiritual goal, and does it help an aspirant towards the ultimate truth?
no.
No.
From the individual to the universal is the cosmological path of progress. So this is an outward facing path, kind of pointing to the objective solution he referred to before, a tantric path. But this by itself can never take you to the absolute. Even when you have expanded yourself to the extent of comprehending the whole universe, you will stand only as the expanded individual by force of samskaras, and therefore you do not transcend individuality, which is that sense of separate self or the ego. The universal, so that word is in quotes, notice, the universal has also to be transcended in order to get to the truth. You get at the same truth by transcending the individual. Then why all this vain labor to reach the universal? So just as the discourse right above, by first being established in the subjective remedy of suffering, one is then available to be useful, helpful in the objective, the universal. So that's, again, that those two discourses tie together. It's if one were to aspire to save the world, I guess.
Right, right. And Jenny said also a scientific path.
The cosmological, yes.
Yeah.
Very true.
And, he's just saying again that to save yourself first. And then you won't have a desire to save the world.
Right.
Because you'll recognize there's nothing to save. There is no individual, yes.
Yes, to expound on what Jenny Beal shared, cosmological path, an objective inquiry into the source of the world and the individual, finally striking an identity between backgrounds of both. So yes,
No
the
problem.
scientific
Yeah.
path. Yeah.
Yeah. No problem following a universal path, but ideally, both paths are best. Yeah.
Right. We can see them coming together and understanding.
Wow,
Uh,
this was great, Jenny. Thank you, and Jenny, and everyone that participated. This was awesome.
and
Uh,
a quick nod to Barbara who put there is no individual, right? There you
yes,
go.
yes. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, everyone. And let's see, is Christmas coming before we meet again? I think so.
It is. It
Yeah.
is.
We'll be
Yeah.
back on the 27th with Susan Telford. So everyone have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday, awesome time wherever you're spending it, and by yourself or with someone. We look forward to being with you again next week. We have 3 more times together, and someone asked about the next volume. We're going to move over to something a little lighter for a few months, and the Gospel of Thomas. And I'll make sure that a link goes out again for that. You can find that on Amazon. And the author is what was his name? Jenny Beal
Um,
Cameron?
Cameron McCall.
Yeah,
Yes,
Cameron
exactly.
McCall. Yeah. So that'll be the next book. If you want to get it, buy it for yourself for Christmas and kind of catch up, just sort of get into it before we
But
start.
it'll be more like March
It's
until
it's
it
actually
starts
not going to
again.
start until March. Yeah, it's going
Yeah,
to
so
be
there's
after
time.
I'm back from India, and we have pause break from having Wednesday book studies for a couple of months.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it'll be good. We can let all these ideas percolate.
yeah, yeah, yeah. This was awesome. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks
You're amazing.
everyone.
All
Yeah.
right. Bye, everyone.